you very much, Alexa. So, Hare Krishna, Prabhu Matagis, welcome all of you, and thank you very much for joining and keeping your appointment with Krishna today. It's 4th of October 2025. So, today we'll be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 27th chapter. It is the second half, that is, this chapter is 30 verses from 16 to 30. So, let us start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God Narayana, unto Narayana, she is the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati neshtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of God, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. We just first recite one verse and then slowly we'll discuss the background and then the verses. ससप्तभिशतैरेको विंशत्या च शतं समाः पुरञ्जनपुराध्यक्षो गन्धर्वैर्युयुधे बली. The word told means Saha, he, Saptabihi with 7, Shataihi 100, Ekaha alone, Vimshatya with 20, Cha also, Shatam 100, Samaha years, Puranjana of King Puranjana, Pura Adhyakshaha, superintendent of the city, Gandharvaihi with the Gandharvas, Yuyude fought, Bali very valiant. Translation and Prabhu Vidwan Gopal Ki Jai. The five-hooded serpent, the superintendent of the and protector of the city of King Puranjana, fought with the Gandharvas for 100 years. He fought alone with all of them, although they numbered 720. Varpat Vaishnavaneshwar, Ashra Gopal. The 360 days and 360 nights. So I was thinking, although they numbered 700, what is this in the 720? The 360 days and 360 nights combined together become the 720 soldiers of Chandavega. Chandavega means time. So one has to fight these soldiers throughout one's lifespan, beginning with the birth and ending with death. So this fight is called the struggle for existence. Despite this struggle, however, the living entity does not die. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, the living entity is eternal. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. For the soul, there is never birth nor death, nor having once been, does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Actually, the living entity does not take birth, nor does he die, but he has to fight with the stringent laws of material nature throughout the entire span of his lifetime. He must also face different kinds of miserable conditions. Despite all this, the living entity, due to illusion, thinks that he is well situated in sense gratification. Om Gyantamrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Supadadikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagara Jatam Sagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Avtamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यां च हस्तचरणश्रवणतगादीन् प्राणानमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमं वन्दे त्वां नमो विष्णुपदे श्रीमती महाविष्णुस्वामिनामने नमो विष्णुपृष्ठपृष्ठवत्सलभक्तिविदासो निरुषेश्वरप्रचतिष्ठाने जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद। So Hare Krishna, Mr. welcome all of you for this Srimad Bhagavatam session. Actually, it's a very wonderful chapter. So it starts from fourth canto, actually 25th, fourth canto, from 25th chapter it starts, where it gives the descriptions of the characteristics of King Puranjana. So let us have some background so that you can understand more. See, while the Prachetas, they were the princes, bro, they were undergoing severe austerities in the water. The father of Prachetas, he was performing different types of fruitive activities. Who was the father of Prachetas? He was King Prachini Barhishat. King Prachini Barhishat. So at that time, Narada Muni, the master and teacher of all the spiritual life, right? He became very compassionate upon the king and decided to instruct him the spiritual life. So Narada Muni asked King Prachini Barhishat, my dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities? And he said, Narada Muni said, the aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness. But these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activity. So the king replied, oh great soul Narada Muni, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. So the king is asking Narada Muni, kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. So we are all under this fruitive activities, right? So now Narada Muni, in this connection, he said, I wish to narrate an old history connected with the character of a king called Puranjan. So please try to hear me with great attention. This is what Narada told the king. So the history of King Puranjana. Actually, this is nothing but the history of King Prachini Bharishat only, told in a different way. In fact, this is an allegorical presentation. The word Puranjana means one who enjoys in a body. Puranjana means one who enjoys in a body. And see, this is clearly explained in the next few chapters. We start this 25 stars, no? 26, 27, 28 and all. So because a person is entangled in material activities, he wants to hear more stories of material activities. So Narada Muni turned to the topics of King Puranjana, who is none other than King Prachini Bharishat. So he's saying in a different way so that people can understand. In fact, king can understand. So he told, my dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana, who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Avigyata. Avigyata means the unknown one. No one could understand the activities of Avigyata. See, every living entity is Puranjana. The word Puram means within this body, within this form. And Jana means living entity. So everyone is Puranjana. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. So he usually engages his body for what? For sense gratification. Because one who is in the bodily conception of life, he feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. And this is the process of karma kanda. The point is one who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored by the dictation of senses, is called a materialist. So a materialist person interested in sense gratification can be called a Puranjana. Now, because such a middle person utilizes his senses according to his whims, right? He may be also called a king. The point to understand is an irresponsible king takes his royal position to be the personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. We can see nowadays, right? The politicians and everything. They tax the people and for their own sense gratification. So the living entity is never born and never dies because he's eternal. His activities are eternal. Although they are performed in different types of bodies. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He does not die even after the annihilation of the body. So the living entity, what he does, he is transmigrating from one body to another and perform various activities. So materialist persons, they do not understand that God is present as the super soul, Paramatma, within the heart of every living entity. See, although the Paramatma sits besides the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma or the living entity, it does not know it. So therefore, he is described as Avijnata Sakha. Avijnata meaning one who has an unknown friend. We all have this unknown friend because we don't realize him, right? The Paramatma as in our heart. So the point now, King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live. And so what he was trying to find a place to live, right? When we suppose we try to get an apartment, we have to search everywhere, right? Move around. So he was King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live. And he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. So finally, what happened? He became very morose and disappointed. The point to understand is there are 84 lakh species of life and millions and trillions of planets within this creation. So the living entity, the soul, wanders throughout these various types of bodies and throughout different planets. Thereby, he is like King Puranjana, who traveled all over the world looking for a suitable place to live. So we, the living entity, also is traveling all the 84 species, trying to find suitable place to live. And ultimately, it is go back to Godhead, right? But it's not finding. So in any form of life, on any planet in the middle world, a living entity cannot be happy because everything in the middle world is unsuitable for the spirit soul. That's why Krishna is advising, Sarva Dharman Paritteja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Shami Mashucha. In 18.66 Bhagavad Gita, it says, abandon all varieties of religion. Just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Mashucha. No need to travel so many times, right? So, in that case, we are immediately relieved from traveling from one body to another and from one planet to another. Immediately we can do that by just surrendering to Krishna. So, this Krishna conscious movement is giving all the wandering living entities a chance to take shelter of Krishna and thus become happy. See, in the purport of 425.13 purport, Prabhupada says, in order to take birth in India, that is Bharat Varsha, one must have performed many pious activities in a past life. What an encouraging statement, no, for all of us. We are all born in India. That means we might have already performed many pious activities in our past lives. See, there are so many questions, and the person who is actually intelligent should simply inquire about the sequence, about the supreme source of everything. That is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. See, a living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence. Okay. But in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire about his spiritual identity, correct? Who am I, right? So this is real human intelligence. See, it is said that one who is simply conscious of his body is no better than an animal, even though he may be in human form. That's why Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matas smitir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. See, in the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with Krishna. Okay. This is called apohana or forgetfulness. Whereas in the human form of life, consciousness is more greatly developed. So the human being has a chance to understand his relationship with the God. So in the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions. Just as Puranjana, the living entity, is asking the unknown girl where she has come from, what her business is, why is she present there, etc., etc. Right? So these are inquiries about Atma Tattva, self-realization. See, the conclusion is that unless a living entity is inquisitive about self-realization, he is nothing but an animal. See, King Puranjana was appreciating the beauty of the girl as if she were the goddess of fortune. But at the same time, he was careful to understand that the goddess of fortune cannot be enjoyed by anyone except Lord Vishnu. Now, since he doubted whether the girl was the goddess of fortune, he inquired about the lotus flower she was not holding. She does not have the lotus flower. So the material world is also the goddess of fortune because the material energy works under the direction of Lord Vishnu. Bhagavad Gita says, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. So the material world cannot be enjoyed by any living entity. If one so desires to enjoy it, immediately becomes a demon like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa. Now, because Ravana, he wanted to enjoy the goddess of fortune, Sita Devi, he was vanquished with all his family, all his wealth, all his opulence, completely gone. However, see, one can, however, enjoy that Maya bestowed upon the living entity by Lord Vishnu, Maya. So the satisfaction of one's senses and desires means enjoying Maya, not the goddess of fortune. Conditional life means being under the control of a woman. In the purport of, I think, 4:25:30, Prabhupada says, conditional life means being under the control of a woman. And certainly the living entity is always at the mercy of a woman or a man. Thus, living entities live in bondage to one another. And thus, they continue this conditional material life illusion by Maya. So, this condition of life is called avidya. Opposed to the avidya is real knowledge. See, the Ishopanishad, it distinguishes between vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance. Vidya is knowledge, and avidya is ignorance. So by avidya, that is ignorance, one becomes conditioned. And by vidya, knowledge, one becomes liberated. So Puranjana admits that he is attracted by avidya. So now he wishes to see the complete feature of avidya, and so he requests the girl to raise her head so that he can see her face to face. And he thus wishes to see the various features that make avidya attractive. This is what is going on in directed civilization, right? So this attraction is enacted on the platform of sexual life. The sex impulse is the platform of material engagement. So this conditioned life, the platform of material sense enjoyment, is the cause of forgetfulness of spiritual life. So in this way, what happens? The living entity's original Krishna consciousness become covered or converted into material consciousness. So one engages in business of sense gratification. So the lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. Prabhupada very beautiful statement said, the lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. In Bhagavatam 5:5:5, it is called Parabhavastavad abodha jataha. Everyone is born ignorant. So Bhagavatam says that we are all born ignorant within this material world. In our ignorance, we may create nationalism, philanthropy, internationals, science, philosophy, so many other things, right? So the basic principle behind all this is ignorance. So what then is the value of all this advancement of knowledge if the basic principles is ignorance? Unless a person comes to Krishna consciousness, all of his activities are defeated. Parabhavas. So this human form of life is especially meant to dissipate ignorance. But without understanding how to dissipate ignorance, people are planning and building many things. After death, however, all of this is finished. See, according to Vedic instructions, there are two paths for human activities. Two paths. One is called Pravritti Marga and the other is called Nivritti Marga. So the basic principle for either of these paths is religious life. In animal life, there is only Pravritti Marga. See, Pravritti Marga means sense enjoyment, Pravritti. And Nivritti means spiritual advancement. See, in the purport of 425-55, Prabhupada says, when the living entity is encircled, when the living entity is encircled by wife, children, home, he acts on the mental plane. Sometimes he is very happy, sometimes he is very much satisfied, sometimes he is not satisfied, sometimes he is bewildered. Bewilderment is called moha, illusion. So, illusion by society, friendship, and love, the living entity thinks that is so-called society, friendship, love, nationality, it will give him protection. That's what he thinks. He does not know that after death he will be thrown into the hands of this very strong material nature, and that will force him to accept a certain type of body according to his present work. So this body may not even be a human body. So the living entity's feeling of security in this life in the midst of society, life, relations, friendship is nothing but illusion. So all living entities engaged, not engaged, engaged in various mental bodies. They are all illusioned by the present activities of mental enjoyment. They forget their real business. Their real business is to go back home, back to Godhead. So everyone who is not in Krishna consciousness must be considered to be in illusion. One's so-called feelings of happiness and satisfaction resulting from middle things, they are all illusions. Actually, neither society, friendship, love, nor anything else can save one from this onslaught of the external energy of Krishna, right? Which is symbolized by birth, death, old age, and disease. See, to get even one living entity out of the illusory condition is very difficult. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7.14, Devi hi yesha gunamahi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of middle nature, is difficult to overcome. He says it's difficult. Krishna himself says, but those who are surrendered to me can easily cross beyond it. So unless one surrenders completely at the lotus feet of Krishna, he cannot get out of the entanglement of the three modes of material nature. So the conclusion that material intelligence is the cause of bondage for the living entity. The point is that one has to take to spiritual intelligence to come out of this entanglement. So in the life of Maharaj Amrisha, we find that the great Maharaj first engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. In this way, his intelligence became very purified. Maharaj Amrisha also used his other senses in the service of Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity in the temple, nicely decorated with flowers. He engaged his sense of smell by smelling the flowers, and he engaged his legs by walking to the temple. His hands were engaged in cleansing the temple, and his ears were engaged in hearing about Krishna. His tongue was engaged in two ways, in speaking about Krishna and in tasting prasada offered to the deity. Materialistic persons who are under the full control of mental intelligence cannot perform all these activities. So, consciously or unconsciously, they become entangled by the dictations of the mental intelligence. That's why in Bhagavatam 5.5.2 it is said, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Maho Vimuktehe. If one associates with saintly person, a devotee, one's path of liberation becomes clear. But if one associates with a woman or with a person who is too much addicted to woman, his path of bondage becomes completely clear. See, on the whole, for spiritual advancement, one must give up the company of women. This is what is meant by the order of sannyasa, the renounced order. So before taking sannyasa or completely renouncing the material world, one has to practice avoiding illicit sex. See, sex life, licit or illicit, is practically the same. But through illicit sex, one becomes more and more captivated. By regulating one's sex life, there is a chance that one may eventually be able to renounce sex or renounce the association of women. If this can be done, advancement in spiritual life comes very easily. So knowledge gives one the preference to accept devotional service. Devotional service automatically reveals actual knowledge of our material existence. In this way, one's life becomes successful. See, in the 26th chapter, right, where King Purunjana goes to the forest to hunt, and his queen becomes angry. The living entity sits in one place only. The causes of his bondage are two. Lamentation, illusion. See, in mental existence, the living entity, simply is hankering to something he can never get. Therefore, he is in illusion. And because of this, being in the illusory situation, living entity is always lamenting. And thus, lamentation and illusion are described as Dvikubara. Dvikubara means the two posts of bondage. We are all in Kali Yuga. So, in this age of Kali, the propensity for mercy is almost nil. You say we are so merciful, right? It's nil. Always fighting and wars between men and women. I'm sorry, men and nations. Men do not understand that because they unrestrictedly kill so many animals, they also must be slaughtered like animals in big wars. That's what is happening. See, in Krishna consciousness movement, animal killing is completely prohibited. One is not accepted as a bona fide student in Krishna consciousness movement unless he promises to follow the four regulatory principles: no animal killing, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. So this Krishna consciousness movement is the only means by which sinful activities of in this Kali Yuga can be counteracted. Regulations are meant for human beings, not for animals. Please understand. Traffic regulations on the street, telling people to keep to the right or to the left are meant for human beings, not animals. So if an animal violates such a law, instead of right, he goes left, he is never punished. But a human being is punished. So Vedas are not meant for animals, but for the understanding of the human society. See, just as the government may issue trade licenses in order for its citizens to act in a certain way, the Vedas contain injunctions that restrain and regulate all our fruitive activities. So all living entities have come into this material world just to enjoy themselves. So the Vedas are given to regulate sense enjoyment. One who enjoys his senses under the Vedic regulatory principles, he does not become entangled in the actions and reactions of his activities. See, a man or a person in the mode of ignorance, he commits many sinful activities. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami explains that a man becomes sinful out of ignorance only. The resultant effect of sinful life is suffering. Those who are not in knowledge, who commit violations of the standard laws, they're all subjected to be punished under criminal laws, right? Similarly, the laws of nature are very stringent. If a child touches fire without knowing the effect, he must be burned, even though he is only a child. So if a child violates the law of nature, there is no compassion. Only through ignorance does a person violate the laws of nature. And when it comes to knowledge, he does not commit any more sinful acts. Very important point to understand. The example of the child, perfect, right? He did not have knowledge. So ignorance, that's why he is suffering. If he has knowledge, he will not. The real mother or mata is devotional service to the Lord. And the real patni or devoted wife is a wife who helps her husband execute religious principles in devotional service. So these two things are required for a happy home. So one has to awaken his Krishna consciousness. How can we awaken Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada says, by first regretting his past deeds. Just as King Puranjana began to flatter his queen, one should, by deliberate consideration, raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness. And to attain this, one must touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master. That's very important. Krishna consciousness cannot be achieved by self endeavor. One must approach a self realized Krishna conscious person and touch his lotus feet. Now, touching the lotus feet of a spiritual master means giving up one's false prestige and the honestly puffed up position in the middle world. Giving up. See, one cannot arouse Krishna consciousness simply by his own mental speculation. Not possible. One must surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. Only this process will help. See, when a devotee is put into an awkward position, he takes it as a mercy of the Lord, right? In 10:14:8, beautiful verse in Bhagavatam. Tattenukam pam sushamekshamano gunjan hevatmakritam vipakam hridvagvapurvirvidadhan namaste jivet yo mukti pade sadvaya bhag. So, the devotee accepts the reversal of his position in life as benediction by the Lord And so he offers the Lord more obeisances and prayers, thinking that the punishment is due to his past misdeeds and that the Lord is punishing him very mildly, small doses. Otherwise, for the sinful acts we might have done in the past, we should be getting more, more, and more. Right? So once pure intelligence or pure Krishna mind becomes polluted by material activities. So pure consciousness can be revived with the process of charity, sacrifice, pious activities. But when one pollutes this Krishna consciousness by offending a Brahmana or Vaishnava, it is very difficult to revive. See, in any marriage or party or gathering, right, decorating oneself with ornaments is considered as an important aspect. So people look at the jewels worn by others and they show a lot of curiosity in the value and designs of the jewels, right? Worn by the bride in marriage ceremonies. You might have seen this. Also, in such occasions, people generally look at what dress or jewels are being worn by others. In this metal world, when we see someone decorated with rich ornaments, no, generally it results in a feeling of envy in our heart. We desire we should also possess and decorate ourselves with such ornaments. Unfortunately, even siblings, couples, they also fight among each other when they don't get equal share of jewelry or property from their family members. So this results in break in family relationships, right? Divorce, even loss of life. In joyous celebrations, when someone tries to show off their opulence by decorating with costly ornaments, it even fuels the anger of other persons. People who look the decorations of others are affected with lust, anger, and envy. So generally, ornaments worn by normal people can invoke lust, anger, envy, greed, right? So for the person who is wearing them, it has the potential to arise in pride on their opulence, right? And in turn, it will push them into ignorance. So when a person wearing them is adored by everyone, certainly they tend to get puffed up, right? Oh, bahut acha hai, very nice, so beautiful. So looking at or contemplating on others' ornaments in itself is not bad. It's not bad just looking at it. It depends on who is looking and whose ornaments are looked at. Because when a husband sees a wife who is decorated with ornaments, it has a lot of positive effect. Srila Prabhupada explains in this chapter only, 427, no, second verse. In the purport, he says, a woman is generally accustomed to dress herself nicely with fine garments and decorative ornaments. She may even sometimes wear flowers in her hair. Women especially dress themselves up in the evening because the husband comes home in the evening after working hard all day. So it is the duty of the wife to dress herself up very nicely so that when her husband returns home, he becomes attracted by her dress and cleanliness and thus becomes satisfied. In other words, the wife is the inspiration of all good intelligence. So upon seeing one's wife dressed nicely, one can think very soberly about family business. When a person is too anxious about family affairs, he cannot discharge his family duties nicely. A wife is therefore supposed to be an inspiration and should keep the husband's intelligence in good order so that they can combinedly prosecute the affairs of family life without impediments. That's what Prabhupada says in this purport of 427.2. So upon seeing one's wife dressed nicely, right, one can think very soberly about the family. So also parents know when they see their son or daughter decorated nicely, feel happy, right? And same is the case with brothers and sisters. Except apart from these, meditating on other ornaments can cause a lot of difficulties, right? So generally, saintly person discourages, saying, "Do not look at others' jewelry, ornaments, and opulences, and don't meditate on them." So the scriptures they are censuring us, the spiritual aspirants, such as gyanis, yogis, and devotees, from any sort of attraction to ornaments. The spiritual aspirants are advised to stay away from gold, diamond, and jewelry of all sorts, because attraction to them could be a stumbling block on the path of our spiritual progress. Those who are in family life, they cannot stay away, right? And are advised to have minimum involvement as much as needed. But are there any ornaments which even the spiritualists can meditate on? Are there any ornaments which can relieve us from our bad qualities like lust, anger? Of course, yes. When you go to the temple, have the darshan of the Lord. Beautiful ornaments, beautiful decorations, Just have the darshan. Automatically you become purified. You become very happy, blissful. If there is no envy, no anger, nothing is, no lust. That is what we have to aspire for. See, the first step of self-realization is to know oneself as spirit soul apart from the body. In the second stage of self-realization, one comes to know that every soul, every individual living entity is part and parcel of Supreme Soul, Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is confirmed in 15.7. Mamevamsho jiva loke jiva bhut sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritistani kashyati. So living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. So due to conditioned life, they were struggling very hard with six senses, which include the mind. See, in the fifth verse, Prabhupada says the words Navam Vayaha, very significant. He says they indicate the period of youth from age 16 to 30. So these 13 or 15 years of life are years in which one can very strongly enjoy the senses. So when one comes to the age, he thinks that life will go on and that he will simply continue enjoying his senses. But time and tide wait for no man. The span of youth expires very quickly. One who wastes his life simply by committing sinful activities in youth immediately becomes disappointed and disillusioned when the brief period of youth is over. The material enjoyments of youth are especially pleasing to a person who has no spiritual training. If one is trained only according to the bodily conception of life, he simply leads a very disappointed life because bodily sense enjoyment finishes within 40 years or so. After 40 years, one simply leads a disillusioned life because he has no spiritual knowledge. For such a person, the expiration of youth occurs in half a moment, just like that. So King Puranjana's pleasure, which he took in lying down with his wife, expired very quickly. So Narada Muni discloses that the character of Puranjana was being described to give lessons to King Prachini Barishat. Actually, the entire description was figuratively describing the activities of King Prachini Barishat. So Narada Muni says, he says, no, in this 4 to 11, Narada Muni frankly says, like you, Yatha Bhavan, which indicates that King Prachini Puranjana is none other than King Prachini Barishat himself. So being a great Vaishnava, Narada Muni wanted to stop animal killing in sacrifices because King Prachini Barishat was offering that, right? He knew that if he tried to stop the king from performing activities, the king would not hear him. Therefore, he is describing the life of Puranjana. But in this verse, he first discloses his intention, although not fully, by saying, like you. See, generally the karmis, no, who are attached to increasing descendants have to perform so many sacrifices. They worship so many demigods for future generations, right? So this is what is happening. So these activities are described in Bhagavad Gita, right? Vyavasatmika buddhir ekahe kuru nandana Bhahushaka yanantascha buddhayo vyavasayina. Those who are on the spiritual path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. They are here and there, right? So actually, those who are in knowledge of everything are determined to execute Krishna consciousness. But those who are rascals, mudaha, sinners, dushkritaha, and the lowest of mankind, naradamaha, who are bereft of all intelligence, right? Who take shelter of the demonic way of life, are disinterested in Krishna consciousness. So Vaishnava Acharya, like Narada Muni, knows very well that persons engaged in such animal killing in the name of religion are certainly becoming involved in the cycle of birth and death, forgetting the real aim of life to go back to God. So Narada Muni, while instructing Bhagavatam to Vyasadeva, condemned the karma kanda, fruitive activities mentioned in the Vedas. He told Vyasadeva, Jugupsitam dharma krite anusasataha. In 1.5.15 Bhagavatam he says, people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy. And you encourage them in that way, in the name of religion. This is really condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. So this is what he was telling, right? So now I share the screen. We'll read some of the purpose. See, 16th verse we saw, right? Five hooded, 360 days, 360. One has to fight these soldiers throughout one's lifespan. Because Chandavega means time. This chapter is entitled what? Attacked by Chandavega on the city of King Puranjana. That means and the character of Kala Kanya. That is the time. Talking about time is one which destroys everything in this middle world. And we get stressed because of time, right? Everything we have to do in time, stress. Deadline. You know, we hear the word deadline. By the time you achieve that, you're dead. That's why it's known as deadline. So the 360 days, 369 combined together to become 70 soldiers, Sandhavega. So one has to fight these soldiers throughout one's life. Because it is confirmed, no? The fighter, Prabhupada writes this, this fight is called the struggle for existence. Many times he says struggle for existence. What is the struggle for existence? Because we have to fight this day and night, trying to earn, satisfy family, so many. This is what is going on, right? But the living entity, the soul does not die. We are all doing it for this body, actually. For the soul, there is no never birth nor death, nor have once does he never cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. So in the 17th verse, it says, because he had to fight alone with so many soldiers, all of whom have great barriers, the serpent with five hoods became very weak. Seeing that his most intimate friend was weakening, King Puranjana and his friends and citizens living within the city of all became very anxious. See, the purport, the living entity resides within the body and struggles for existence with the limbs of the body, and which are referred to here as citizens and friends. One can struggle alone with many soldiers for some time, but not for all time. So the living entity within the body can struggle up to the limit of 100 years with good luck. But after that, it is not possible to prolong the struggle. So living entity submits and falls victim. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, no? Vriddha Kala Aula Sava Sukha Bhagala. When one becomes old, it becomes impossible to enjoy material happiness. Generally, people think that religion and piety come at the end of life. And at this time, one generally becomes meditative and takes to so-called yogic process to relax in the name of meditation. Meditation is simply a farce for those who have enjoyed in life in sense gratification. As described in the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, meditation, dhyana, dharana, is a difficult subject matter that one has to learn from his very youth. So to meditate, one must refrain himself from all kinds of sense gratification. Unfortunately, meditation has now become a fashion for those who are wholly addicted to sensual things. So such meditation is defeated by the struggle for existence. Sometimes such meditative processes pass for transcendental meditation. King Puranjana, living in the beginning, thus victimized, the harsh struggle for existence, took to transcendental meditation with his friends. See the point, King Puranjana, he collected taxes, right, in the city, and thus was able to engage in other sexual intelligence, sexual. So being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and he was reaching the point of death. See, government men, Prabhupada says, including kings, presidents, right? They are in a position to utilize taxes collected from the citizens for sense gratification. That's what we are seeing, right? Taxes are increasing, direct, indirect, whatever it is. And they're using for their own, not for the development or benefit of the welfare of the people. That's why it is stated in Bhagavatam that in Kali Yuga, these men in government, no, those who are connected with government, they will all simply collect taxes for sense gratification. So this is very difficult. So it will not save anybody, right? But ultimately they have to also go away, right? It will not save one from the danger of death, nor will it save one from absolute afterlife also. That also is dangerous. So in the 19th verse, it says, my dear King Prachibarishat, Narmani is telling, at this time the daughter of formidable time was seeking her husband throughout the three worlds. Although no one agreed to accept her, she came. See, when the body becomes old and practically invalid, it is subjected to jara. Jara means sufferings of old age. Janmamuti Jara Vyadi, right? Jara. So these are four basic kinds of sufferings: birth, old age, disease, and death. See, no scientist or philosopher they have ever been able to make a solution to all these four conditions, right? So the invalidity of old age which is known as Jara, is very figuratively explained here as the daughter of time. No one likes her, but she is very much anxious to accept anyone as her husband. That is this time, Jara, right? Old age. No one likes old age, right? He is figuratively given as daughter of time. So no one likes to become old and invalid, but this is inevitable for everyone. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, no? Sabha Sukha Bhagala, right? All kinds of happiness disappear in old age. No one likes old age or Jara. So Jara, as the daughter of time, is known as the most unfortunate daughter. Kala, right? So at one time, accepted by great king Yayati, this is a very nice episode. Yayati, Prabhupada gives this. Yayati was cursed by his father-in-law Shukracharya to accept his daughter. So when Shukracharya's daughter was married to King Yayati, one of her friends named Sarmishta went with her. Later, King Yayati became very much attached to Sarmishta. And Shukracharya's daughter complained to her father. So Shukracharya cursed King Yayati to become prematurely old. Now King Yayati had 5 youthful sons, and he begged all his sons to exchange their youth for his old age. No one agreed except the youngest son, whose name was Puru. So upon accepting Yayati's old age, Puru was given the kingdom. It is said that two of Yayati's sons, being disobedient to their father, were given kingdoms outside of India. And Prabhupada says most probably Turkey and Greece. The purport is that one can accumulate wealth and all kinds of material opulences, but during old age, one cannot enjoy them. Although Puru attained his father's kingdom, he did not enjoy all the opulence because he had sacrificed his youth. So one should not wait for old age in order to become Krishna conscious. So due to the invalidity of old age, one cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness. However opulent he may be naturally, materially. So Narada he was a Naishtika brahmachari, right? He never had sex life. So he was consequently an evergreen youth. So old age Jara could not attack him. So invalidity of old age can overcome an ordinary man. But Narada was different. So see, taking Narada to be an ordinary man, the daughter of time, Jara, confronted him with her lusty desires. It requires great strength to resist a woman's attraction. So it is difficult for old men. What to speak of young? See, those who live as brahmacharis must follow in the footsteps of the great sage Narada, who never accepted the proposal of Jara. Those who are too much sexually addicted become victims of Jara, old age. And very soon their lifespan is shortened. So without utilizing the human form of life for Krishna consciousness, the victims of Jara die very soon in this world. So Narada has a spiritual body. Therefore, old age, disease, birth, death do not affect him. See, Narada is a very kind devotee of the Supreme Lord, right? And his only business is to travel all over the universe and preach Krishna consciousness. His business is to make everyone a Vaishnava. He has wonderful disciples, right? Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Vyasdev. So see, there is ordinarily no need for him to stay in one place for more than the time he requires to preach. So by his own free will, he's already traveling all over. So the curse of Kalakanya is described as fortunate. Kalakanya cursed Narada because he didn't accept this old age, right? Jara. So Kalakanya time, it cursed him that he will not stay in one place. But it was fortunate for him. Narada see, many other devotees of the Lord are engaged in preaching, like their Narada now. Many other devotees in the Krishna movement, they are all engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord in different places and different universes. Universe is different, and nowadays countries, so many countries they are traveling. So such personality is beyond the jurisdiction of the material laws. So, being the most perfect Vaishnava, Narada is always willing to do good to others, even to one who curses him. See, although Kalakanya, the daughter of time, was refused by Narada she was given a shelter. Of course, no one could give her shelter, but a Vaishnava gives shelter somewhere to such an unfortunate girl. So when Jara or old age attacks, everyone dwindles and deteriorates, right? But in one stroke, Narada gave shelter to Kalakanya and counteracted the ordinary karmis. What does it mean? That means if one accepts the instructions from Narada The ocean of fear, bhaya, can be very quickly removed by the grace of the great Vaishnava. See, as I was reading this chapter, no, I came across this in Bhagavatam very interesting words which gave answer to speculative questions of most of our most unfaithful mind. What are the questions? Oh, what will I do in my old age when I get sick and old? Who will take care of me if I take renunciation? I'll have no wife, children, house, social health, retirement service. How will I get money? I'm not working but serving in the temple, etc., etc. So in the verse, Bhagavatam 3, 2, 4, third canto, second chapter, fourth verse, Uddhava and Srila Prabhupada will clear off these concocted questions out of our mind once and for all. Sakatam sevaya tasya kalena jarasam gatah prishto vatam pratibhuruyat bhartu padam anusmaran. Uddhava thus served the Lord continually from childhood. And in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the messenger of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. See, the purport Prabhupada very nicely says the service attitude of the devotee gradually increases and never becomes slackened. Generally, in old age, a person is allowed retirement from mundane service. But in transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement role. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. So, in the transcendental service, there is no cessation. Therefore, there is no retirement. Materially, when a man becomes tired by rendering service in his physical body, he is allowed retirement. But in the transcendental service, there is no feeling of fatigue because it is spiritual service and it's not on the bodily plane. Service on the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows older, but the spirit is never old. Therefore, on the spiritual plane, the service is never tiresome. That's why in the 24th verse of this chapter 4, 27, 24, the purport Prabhupada says, if a person is Krishna conscious, he can work like a young man, even if he is 75 or 80 years old. If a person is Krishna conscious, he can work like a young man, even if he is 75 or 80 years old. Thus, the daughter of Kala, time, cannot overcome a Vaishnava. Prabhupada says, Srila Krishnadas Gaviraj Goswami engaged in writing Chaitanya Charitamrita when he was very old, he was almost 90. Yet he presents the most wonderful literature about the activities of Lord Chaitanya. So, Jara, invalidity, effect of old age, does not harass a devotee. This is because the devotee follows the instructions and the determination of Narada. Old age does not make a devotee fearful of death, as a common man is fearful of death. So, when Jara or old age takes shelter of a devotee, Kala diminishes the devotee's fear. The devotee knows that after death he is going back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, he has no fear of death. Instead of depressing a devotee, advanced age helps him become fearless and thus happy. So we have seen all the acharyas, right? In fact, my Guru Maharaj, he had serious, at the age of 85, right? He had serious breathing problems. He having recovered from cerebral attack. So, and he also was infected with malaria later on. But he managed to open two temples. Start construction of largest temple. Now, yes, Rajkot ISKCON temple is there. Organize so many other activities. Right? Daily Mangalati, giving classes on Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, 3 to 4 hours without break. Answering phone calls in between of devotees coming from every time, anytime. At that age. He never speaks of retirement. Even though so many times devotees requested to slow down with preaching activities. He was moving around. He was, in fact, more furiously fighting against the agents of Maya. And a very nice statement he said, those who are ready to die will not die. And those who don't want to die will definitely die. So this is a very powerful statement which he had given. And so from this Puranjana's pastimes, we could learn so many lessons, but shortage of time, other things can be, but you can leave it to you to read the purpose. I think 30, another 4, 5 verses are there. You can go through those purports and maybe it'll be useful for all of you to understand. Very simple and very practical points. And it is all definitely touching We can reflect ourselves. Oh, this is regarding me. And then how to get out of these difficulties, right? So this King Puranjana is nothing, a story given by Narmani, is allegorical presentation of King Prachini Maharshi. So I stop here. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Granthala Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Tagore, Vancha Kalpaturi Vishkripa Sindhu Vacha. Patitanam Pavan. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranams. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna devotees, Dhanavad Pranams.
Krishna.